Today I'm going to do a Halloween shoot using 5 NanLite PavoTubes. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and happy Halloween. Now, one of the reasons I love Halloween is I love seeing the incredible makeup that people come up with, especially my makeup artist friends. They're constantly re-envisioning old characters, inventing new ones, creating creatures, and it's super inspiring. Plus, it's a time of year where there really are no rules. Like, the face is a canvas and you can make it as weird as you want, which is kind of what we've done today. All right, so today in front of me, my makeup artist, Joanne Gair, put together this skull feather creature, and the point is, it's just beautiful and creepy and enchanting and fun to look at, and so I'm really excited to shoot it. Now to do so, today I'm going to use 5 different NanLite PavoTubes. Now if you're unfamiliar with the NanLite PavoTubes, they're a constant LED light source that are full RGB. That means you can make them any color you can possibly imagine. Plus, you can control the saturation and the brightness or dimness of these light sources, and they can actually get really bright, which is great. Now, let's talk a little bit about the different types of PavoTubes. They come in a variety of different sizes, and today I'm shooting primarily with the 4-foots. So I have 4 4-foot PavoTubes and 1 2-foot PavoTube. Of course, the benefit of the 4-foots is you can light a little bit more evenly head to toe, but the 2-foots are going to be less expensive and they're more portable. So a mix of those is what I use in my studio, and since I'm just doing a beauty shoot, I could have easily only used 2 and 1-foot PavoTubes, but I decided to pull out the 4-foots. When deciding how to light this image, I knew that I wanted to have something that was maybe a little bit creepy, maybe a little bit monster lit, so I knew that I likely wanted to have a strong bottom light source. And I was thinking that color could be quite interesting, especially since the feathers themselves have little hints of blue and green. So that's how I figured out what colors to make my 2 main lights. So let's build in each of these PavoTubes one by one. We're going to begin with the 4-foot above my subject's head. And I've chosen blue because, again, I'm picking up from the feathers. So let's take a shot. Perfect. And I'm gonna have you keep the same pose straight on to me the entire time. So that's perfect. So you can see this creates a nice blue wash across the subject's face, but there isn't really any dimension to this shot. There's not really any visual pop or interest. And so that's why I've added the 2nd PavoTube below. And I'm going to make it green. And I have it relatively strong so it gives me that bottom monster light. If you look at the catch lights in the eyes, you're gonna see these 2 really interesting slits of light on the top and bottom of her pupils, which I think helps add to the creepy effect. So let's add our 2nd PavoTube to the scene. You'll notice in this shot that I'm actually using the Savage Universal C stand. This is a perfect opportunity to use this stand because I have the 1 PavoTube held above, but the Savage stand actually has a lower riser where I can attach the 2nd tube. So I don't need to bring out a floor stand or another C stand to hold it in place. I have the ability to connect 2 to just a single stand. All right, so let's add that 2nd PavoTube into the scene. All right, so this 2nd PavoTube with the green light, you can see how strong it is. It's giving me that monster light. There's a ton more definition to all of the feathers and that sparkle to the gems and the teeth of the skull. So far so good, but overall I think that the shot is looking maybe a little bit flat. She's kind of blending into the background, and there's usually 2 ways that I help a subject pop from the background. I either add rim lights or I add a background light. And since I had a few of these PavoTubes lying around, I decided to add both. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add in my 2 rim lights. I have 1 on either side. Now my logic is here that since I had a blue PavoTube and a green as my main and fill lights, I would do the same thing with my rim lights. So it would kind of create layers of color. So let's add those 2 rim lights into the scene. So you can see that the rim lights are adding a really beautiful separation on her jawline and the side of her face, but I still think the shot would be a little bit more interesting and have more depth if I added a final tube to the background. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 2-foot PavoTube directly behind the subject on the floor stand pointed at the background. But I'm actually going to point it down slightly. And the reason is it's going to give me a gradient on the background. So it'll be brighter on the bottom and fade to shadow on the top, which creates a little bit more visual interest rather than just having the background flat lit. and I'm going to make this PavoTube blue. So what I'm actually creating is something called an analogous color scheme. So I'm creating everything in the blues and green tones, but I've got enough variation in the colors that it creates a little bit more of an interesting result. All right, so let's turn on that background light. All right, so you see in this shot how it's a little bit brighter near the bottom of her neck and her shoulders, and then it fades to shadow. I personally think that's a little bit more interesting. So consider when you're placing a background light, changing the angle, and sometimes it'll give a more interesting gradient to your shot. Okay, so that is what gives us 5 PavoTubes. A main light and fill light, or maybe technically the bottom is the main light. So I have a main and fill light. I have 2 rim lights and then a background light. All of it in the blue-green palette, and now it's time to get the shot. And so I'm going to try different angles. Straight on is really aggressive and strong. To the side is going to give me interesting looks of her profile, and then those rim lights are going to kiss the side of the feathers. So we're going to work that shot, and I'm going to do so with the Canon R5 and the Canon 70-200 2.8 RF lens. So this lens is going to be great because I think most of the interesting shots are really, really close. So I'm going to shoot at a longer focal length, crop really tight, and focus on the details and her expression and the beautiful colors of the light. For this shoot, I'm going to be shooting at 1/200th of a second because these are constant light sources, and I want to make sure I don't shoot at a slower shutter speed because I'll likely get a little bit of camera shake and a little bit of motion. So I'm shooting with my image stabilization on, and I'm shooting at 1/200th of a second. Next, I'm shooting at an aperture of f/5.6. Now, originally my thought process was that, okay, these are constant lights, let me shoot at 2.8. But when just her eye would be in focus and maybe the lips would be a little out of focus, I thought it was distracting. So I shot with the ability to give myself a little bit more depth of field, which is why I chose f/5.6. And then lastly, I chose an ISO of 1000. Now, the reason I'm choosing an ISO of 1000 is that even though these are really bright, I want to be able to have that little bit more depth of field, and I want to be able to shoot a little faster shutter speed. But 1000 is completely clean and completely acceptable when shooting with the Canon R5. So back in the day, I used to be afraid of shooting really anything over ISO 400, but with these newer digital cameras, I don't even have to think about it at all. The images look great. All right, so let's get that shot. Okay, now, can you look your eye over at me? And can you tilt your head? Will you do that really strong? Yeah, exactly. These shots look beautiful and they look creepy and they're unusual and they fit Halloween, but they still have that kind of beauty stylistic edge that I love to shoot so much. Now, if you'd like to see the gear that I used in this video, be sure to check out the links below and visit Adorama.com. Now, by the way, if you don't happen to have 5 PavoTubes lying around and you don't have several of the 4-foots, you should definitely check out some of their less expensive and smaller PavoTubes. The 1-foots or combination of 1-foots and 2-foots could still do an image very similar to this. I love these and I use them all the time, so it's definitely something to check out to add to your kit. Now, if you've liked this video and you want to see a lot more like these, be sure to like and subscribe. And everybody, I hope you have a wonderful and beautiful Halloween. See you next time.